Hard times, simple kitchens, and the smell of sizzling beef, our grandparents turned scarcity into survival. These forgotten ground beef recipes born in the Great Depression proved that creativity and resilience could feed both body and spirit. From porcupine meatballs to shipwreck casserole, each dish carries a story of endurance. Before we begin, hit like and subscribe. Today we revisit 10 forgotten ground beef recipes your grandparents ate to survive. Hamburger gravy over mashed potatoes. Picture a drafty farmhouse kitchen during the Great Depression. A cast iron skillet sat sizzling on the stove while sacks of potatoes bought in bulk for pennies waited in the corner. Out of that humble scene came one of the most comforting survival dishes, hamburger gravy over mashed potatoes. The magic wasn't in rare spices or expensive cuts of meat, it was in the patience of grandmothers. A single pound of ground beef could stretch to feed 6 mouths. She browned it slowly, working the spoon until every drop of flavor was released. Flour followed, whisked into the fat until it formed a rich base. Milk was added bit by bit, thickening into a silky gravy that could rival anything from a fine French kitchen. Salt, pepper, maybe even a splash of Worcestershire, if luck allowed, brought the dish alive. Spooned generously over towering piles of creamy mashed potatoes, this meal filled bellies and steadied spirits. Children begged for seconds, never suspecting they were eating poor food. For them, it was simply delicious warmth on a plate when the future outside those walls felt uncertain. Old school goulash. Imagine a big enamel pot bubbling away on the stove in a crowded kitchen during the 1930s. Neighbors might wander in each with their own idea of what real goulash should taste like. But this wasn't Hungary's paprika-heavy stew. It was pure American survival cooking. Ground beef met elbow macaroni, joined by whatever vegetables were teetering on the edge of spoiling in the icebox. Softening bell peppers, sprouting onions, or a lonely can of tomatoes all found their place in the pot. The beauty of goulash lay in its flexibility. It absorbed everything and turned scraps into something hearty and satisfying. As it simmered, the kitchen filled with a rich, savory aroma that promised comfort. Parents appreciated how the dish stretched a few ingredients into multiple meals. Kids adored it because it was pasta and beef in one steaming bowl, the kind of food that seemed endless when ladled out. By the next day, the flavors melded even deeper, making leftovers even better than the first serving. Families swore their way was the only right way to make it, yet the truth was simple. Goulash was about resilience, not recipes. If you're enjoying this trip, hit like and subscribe for more. Sloppy Joe pie. Picture a Sunday table in the 1940s when money was tight, but the family still wanted something that felt special. Instead of a roast, many households turned to a clever twist, sloppy Joe pie. The kitchen filled with the sweet, tangy scent of ground beef, browned with onions, ketchup, a spoon of brown sugar, and just enough Worcestershire to give it bite. But instead of being piled on soft hamburger buns, the mixture went into a casserole dish and was crowned with cornbread batter. As it baked, the cornbread rose golden, soaking up the juices underneath while staying moist and flavorful. When pulled from the oven, it looked like a dish worthy of company, even if the cupboards were nearly bare. Paired with a side of canned green beans or a quick salad, it made families feel like they were dining in style. Children dug in with excitement, never realizing it was just a thrifty trick. What lingered was not the budget, but the joy of eating together, the sense that a meal could turn an ordinary evening into something memorable. Between hamburger, gravy, goulash, and sloppy Joe pie, if you had to choose just one to bring back to your dinner table today, which would it be? Beef and cabbage skillet. On a bitter winter evening in the 1930s, fresh vegetables were rare luxuries. That's when cabbage became the quiet hero of countless suppers. In one skillet, a pound of ground beef met its perfect partner, shredded cabbage, hearty and humble. The meat sizzled first, releasing a savory aroma before onions and thick ribs of cabbage were added in careful stages. Each layer wilted, slowly caramelizing just enough to bring out its natural sweetness. Seasonings were simple: salt, pepper, maybe a splash of vinegar or a pinch of caraway seeds if they were on hand. Yet the result was a dish far richer than its ingredients suggested. The cabbage soaked up the beef drippings, creating a harmony of flavors that tasted like security itself. Served with boiled potatoes or thick-cut bread, it filled hungry stomachs and kept families strong for long days of labor. Many households ate this dish several nights a week, and somehow no one grew tired of it. It was more than a meal, it was a reminder that even the most modest pantry could produce warmth, comfort, and resilience. Shipwreck casserole. Picture payday still a few nights away in the 1940s cupboards, nearly bare, and a mother surveying whatever scraps remained. Out of that desperation came the oddly named but deeply loved shipwreck casserole. It began with browned ground beef, then in went canned corn, green beans, or diced tomatoes, whatever was hiding at the back of the pantry. A can of cream soup sometimes pulled it all together with onion soup mix, lending bold flavor without costing extra. The magic happened on top. A bag of potato chips, often slightly stale, was crushed and sprinkled generously. In the oven, they transformed into a golden crust, so irresistible that children fought for the crispy bits. What should have been a meal of leftovers became a dish that tasted like a treat, the kind families requested even when times improved. It wasn't fancy, but it carried the joy of making something out of nothing, a kind of kitchen alchemy passed quietly through generations. Shipwreck casserole was proof that thrift and love could create comfort greater than the sum of its parts. Your comments keep these memories alive. Drop yours below. Beef and biscuit ring. Picture a Sunday dinner table in the 1950s where company might drop by unannounced and the budget left little room for extravagance. That's when the beef and biscuit ring made its entrance. Ground beef was browned with onions, sometimes enriched with a spoon of mushroom soup or a packet of onion mix. Simple ingredients, but the real showstopper was the arrangement. Refrigerated biscuit dough was carefully placed in a circle around the edge of a baking dish, forming a crown that looked grand even before it baked. As the oven worked its magic, the biscuits puffed golden, encasing the savory beef filling in the center. The dish emerged looking like something from a glossy cookbook, impressive enough to delight guests, yet humble at heart. Children loved pulling apart the biscuits, dipping each piece into the steaming beef mixture. It made dinner interactive, almost playful. This wasn't just a meal, it was presentation turning necessity into pride. Families could smile knowing they'd created something beautiful out of the simplest pantry staples. If you're enjoying this trip, hit like and subscribe for more. Salisbury steak. Step into a modest kitchen of the 1940s where a single pound of ground beef had to look like a feast. That's where Salisbury steak earned its reputation as the working man's steak. Mothers mixed breadcrumbs, egg, and a splash of milk into the beef, shaping it into oval patties that looked more elegant than their humble origins. They were browned in a hot skillet until a crust formed, then set aside while onions slowly caramelized, filling the room with a sweetness that promised something special. Flour and drippings came together in that same pan to form a glossy brown gravy. The patties were nestled back in, simmering until every bite tasted like Sunday supper. Children believed they were eating real steak, proud to tell friends about it the next day. For parents, it was proof that ingenuity could transform the cheapest cut into something hearty and dignified. Many made extras to freeze, stretching the comfort even further. Salisbury steak wasn't just dinner, it was resourcefulness turned into tradition. Beef macaroni loaf. Imagine opening the oven door in the 1950s to reveal a loaf pan holding something both familiar and new. Meatloaf was already a staple, but when meat was scarce, families gave it a twist. The beef macaroni loaf, cooked pasta, often leftovers from earlier in the week, was folded into seasoned ground beef with breadcrumbs, eggs, and milk. As it baked, the mixture bound together, each slice showing bits of macaroni peeking through like hidden treasures. Sometimes a layer of tomato sauce was mixed in, giving it moisture and tang. To children, it felt like two meals in one, part pasta, part meatloaf, but entirely comforting. Parents loved how it stretched a single pound of beef into something that could feed the whole family and still leave leftovers for sandwiches the next day. It was a clever answer to waste, yesterday's noodles reborn as tonight's centerpiece. Families gathered, carving generous slices, grateful that thrift could taste so satisfying. The beef macaroni loaf wasn't just dinner. It was ingenuity baked into every slice. Cabbage rolls. Step into an American kitchen of the 1970s where a pot on the stove gently simmers with rows of cabbage rolls tucked neatly inside. Large green leaves softened by steam were wrapped carefully around a filling of ground beef, rice, onions, and garlic. Each roll was snug like a little parcel of love, then blanketed with tangy tomato sauce before baking slowly until tender. The smell was unforgettable, earthy cabbage mingling with savory meat and the sweet acidity of tomatoes. It was a dish that demanded patience, but the payoff was a hearty family meal that stretched simple ingredients into something that felt abundant. Served piping hot, the rolls brought warmth to the table, bite after satisfying bite. For many, preparing cabbage rolls was a family ritual, with children helping to spoon the filling while parents rolled each leaf with practiced care. It was more than food, it was tradition wrapped up and passed down. Looking back at Salisbury steak, beef macaroni, loaf and cabbage rolls, which of these hearty dinners would you gladly bring back into your own kitchen today? Porcupine meatballs. Picture a family kitchen in the 1950s where dinner needed to be filling, fun, and a little different to keep children excited. That's when porcupine meatballs earned their place at the table. Ground beef was mixed with raw rice, onions, and a splash of tomato sauce before being shaped into neat balls. As they simmered gently in a bubbling tomato bath, the rice expanded, poking through the meat like tiny quills, giving them their whimsical name. The sight alone made kids laugh, but the flavor sealed the deal. Each bite was tender, juicy, and rich with tangy sauce served over mashed potatoes or simple white rice. Parents loved how the dish stretched a pound of meat further while turning plain rice into something special. These quirky meatballs carried more than novelty. They carried comfort. For many families, porcupine meatballs became a signature weeknight dish, proof that creativity and necessity could bring smiles as well as nourishment. Don't forget to subscribe for more nostalgia and retro memories. Those humble ground beef dishes weren't just recipes, they were survival strategies, carrying families through the darkest of times with warmth and ingenuity. From cabbage rolls to porcupine meatballs, each bite was proof that love and resilience mattered more than fancy ingredients. Today, they remind us that food is history on a plate, a connection to grandparents who made do and made memories at the same time. Which of these forgotten recipes would you love to try in your own kitchen? Until next time, let's keep these stories alive, one meal, one memory at a time.